Hey everyone, it's Alicia, and I know it's been a while, but that's because the baby mama dance made me go into labor basically. I'm pretty sure that's what did it because they say that like a lot of activity will make you go into labor, and it's a pretty active dance. And like that night, I started having contractions, and um, I thought that it would be good to tell my birth story here because they say that women get amnesia about pregnancy and birth and postpartum because if we could remember what it was like, we would never do it. And it's already kind of happening with my birth story. And I thought that my birth was kind of crazy. It was 36 hours and 6 of that was pushing, which is a little unusual. Like the average push time is 2 hours, and then the max that they'll do is 4 hours. So 6 hours was a lot. And I always think that birth stories are interesting. So anyway, um, it started on Monday at 3 a.m. is when the contractions were the right amount of time apart. And so we go to the hospital, and the doctor's like, yeah, you're only 1 centimeter dilated, so we're gonna have to send you home. And we were like, no, because it's so annoying. And it's like the main thing that we wanted to avoid was having to go home after we got to the hospital. So, but then like she left the room right after she said that. And I had a couple contractions really close together. And she came in and said, okay, so the baby's heartbeat dropped, and we want to keep you for monitoring because we don't really like that. And that's part of the reason that I was at the hospital for so long because basically they had to start inducing me so that I would dilate more. And it just took forever. And it was kind of a blessing in disguise, though, because about 15 minutes after we got to the hospital, there was a blizzard. I live in Colorado, and this blizzard started, and that would have really sucked to go home in and come back to the hospital in. So, I mean, it was like, then I had to be at the hospital forever, but I also didn't have to deal with coming back in a blizzard because the doctors and nurses that came in that morning were like 3 hours late because the blizzard was so bad. It was like whiteout. So anyway, they bring me to this room and she's like, look, you've got a while. Like, do you want an Ambien? And I was like, I mean, I guess I don't really take Ambien or sleeping pills at all, but it sounded like I had a long time to go. So she gave me the Ambien. And when I woke up, um, my contractions had basically stopped. And I was like, no, this is going to take forever. And so they decided to put this balloon in my canal, and it helps the cervix dilate. I forget why. There's like water involved. Anyway, it's extremely uncomfortable. And I was like, how long does this usually, stay up there? And they were like anywhere from 2 to 12 hours. And I was like, what? Excuse me? That is what? 12 hours? I thought there's no freaking way I'm going to be like in this hospital with a balloon up me for 12 hours. Fast forward 12 hours and I'm not dilated enough yet. So she's like, okay, we're going to leave it in for another 2. And at this point, I like got an epidural, which is a wonderful thing. I don't know why women don't do it. I mean, I know that there are like a couple of reasons for the baby, and it did suck not walking, I will say. And you can't eat, which is also really hard because you have to have the energy to push. But it's the only reason that I got rest. And honestly, it was like witchcraft. It was so wonderful. Like I didn't feel anything anymore. And that balloon thing in particular is like really uncomfortable. So maybe it's like not as uncomfortable if you're doing natural birth, but I don't know. My cousin just went in and she didn't do an epidural and she was in labor for like, I don't know, same thing, like 30 hours or something. So, like, cause they say that the epidural slows your contractions, but I don't know. I think that it's just different for every single person. And that's the part that sucks about birth and pregnancy is that there's no hard, fast rule. Anyway, I got an epidural and they put me on Pitocin which is supposed to dilate you even further or get contractions going more faster, whatever. And I got this migraine. And so I was like, I have a migraine. And they were like, okay, we can give you something for it. And I never really take migraine medicine, like other than Excedrin migraine. And the stuff they gave me, I had like a really bad reaction to. It gave me a panic attack, and I've never really had a panic attack, but I like all of a sudden couldn't breathe. I was like, and I was like attached to all these tubes. I had like this oxygen thing on, and then I had an IV, and I had an epidural, and I had like a heartbeat thing on my finger, and I had like stuff hooked up to my belly so they could monitor contractions and they could monitor the baby's heart rate. And it was like, oh my God, I want to rip all these tubes off and run. Like I have to walk. I've been laying in bed for like 20 hours. I can't lay here anymore. Just this like overwhelming feeling that I like had to get out of there. And obviously I couldn't. That would be really bad. And so they gave me something, but it didn't really help. And I like white knuckled it for like an hour and a half. I was sweating my ass off. And I was also like shaking, like violently shaking, like chattering my jaw, which apparently is a normal part of pregnancy. Like a lot of people chatter and shake, but, or labor, I mean. And I had to like create like a bit out of the hospital sheets, or like I was like trying to put my finger there because like my teeth were just like chattering so hard. So I'm like hanging on for dear life, like, you're gonna make it through. You're gonna make it through. And eventually I asked the nurse, I was like, please, can I just have a C-section? I just want like an instant baby. Like I can't do this. Because the doctor was like, look, girl, you're in a marathon. You're only halfway through. Like, you got a long ways to go. You need to hang in there. And it was like, just seemed so impossible at the time to wait another, whatever, 12 hours or however long it was going to be. So they suggested an Ambien again. And I was like, I don't know. The last time I took an Ambien, my contractions stopped. And they were like, yeah, but now you're hooked up on Pitocin, so I don't think that's going to happen. And I put it to my husband, and he was like, all right, yeah, let's do it. Best decision I could have ever made. I slept for like 12 hours. No shit. I was like, they just came in to check me every hour or so, to see how far dilated I was. But I was basically sleeping the whole time, which is the only reason that I had the strength to push for 6 freaking hours. And so when it finally came time, and I was 10 centimeters. And by the way, it's really weird how everybody, sorry, my dog is like a very sensitive dog alarm. It's weird how everybody's coming in to like put their hands up inside you to check how dilated you are. Like it starts to feel like you're not even a body or something, or like it's not attached to a person. It's just really weird. And you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm on an epidural because there's all these hands up in me. And there was this one girl who was really sweet, but she was training, so she was like taking even longer. She was like, I think it's this many centimeters dilated, or like, like, is this the lip of the blah, blah, blah? I'm like, oh my God, just get your hands out, please. So anyway, they finally come in and check, and they're like, she's 10 centimeters dilated. And I'm like, yes, I thought that this moment would never happen. And they're like, it's time to push. So I'm like, woo, finish line, right? No, another 6 hours, although I didn't know that was coming. And they brought this like bar, and they had a sheet attached to it where I could like pull up, because you basically have to do like a crunch to like crunch your stomach and like push the baby out when you have a contraction, along with like pushing. And I was like crying. I was like, I'm really scared that I'm going to poop, because everybody talks about how you poop on the table. And they were like, oh my God, don't worry about it. Like, that's the feeling we want you to have. That's how you're supposed to push. Like, and I don't know, they were just like, the nurses were so nice. But that was definitely a scary thing. And I have no idea if it happened, honestly. But I was pretty upset about, you're just so vulnerable. Like, it's just a very vulnerable situation. You're spread eagle, and all these people are up in your hoo-ha. And you're just like, okay, like this is what they do. They see it all the time, like multiple times a day and night. So anyway, my husband has one leg, the nurse has another. I'm holding on to the sheet and pushing, and she basically gets down to my pubic bone where first she's supposed to be like face down, but she's sunny side up. And it's harder for them to come out. So this this doctor with really long, skinny fingers is able to get in there and turn her around. Thank God. Didn't help as much as I was hoping, but it definitely relieved some pain. And so then she just got stuck on my pubic bone and she kept like banging up against it and not coming out. And I was stuck there for about 3 hours and I was like, look, this chick is not coming out past my pubic bone. They said that I was like pushing great. And the only reason they let me go longer than 4 hours is because her heartbeat was good and my heartbeat was good. So they were like, all right, I mean, eventually I was going to be exhausted though. So I was like, we need to have another option to get her out of past this pubic bone because she was so low that they couldn't do a C-section at that point. So they have a vacuum and they have forceps. And I was like, okay, well, the vacuum sounds weird, like kind of unnatural. I think I'm going to go with forceps. But can you just get her past the pubic bone? Because I've heard that it really tears the mom and also like bruises the baby and causes like some brain damage sometimes and stuff. Sancho, stop. And I didn't want any of that to happen. So, here's Sancho. So I was like, can you just pull her past the pubic bone? And I'll push her the rest of the way. And they said yes. And so they brought out the forceps, and I was like, I can't look. I know that it looks like some medieval torture tool. My husband said it looked like giant salad tongs. I was just like, oh, this is happening. There's nothing I can do. And they got her past the pubic bone, and then I was pushing, and they're like, man, this girl is stubborn. Like, we could see her head. First of all, she has hair. We're like, oh, my God, she has hair. Because you never know. I had terrible acid reflux, but, it's kind of a wives' tale if that means that your baby has hair. And so, anyway, they're like, she's hanging on by her ears. Like, she just, like, won't come out. And so they had to do an episiotomy and cut me just a little. But apparently it was only a level 1 tear, which is like not that bad. I have friends that have had level 2s and 3s. And then the level 4 is the vaginus. It's when it rips all the way. So, I feel like I lucked out. Apparently 99% of women tear. So anyway, the second they do the episiotomy, the next push, her whole freaking body comes out. And it's just like, oh my God, I honestly didn't know if she was ever going to show up, if I was ever going to birth this baby. And the nurses were so nice because their shift was actually over, but they stayed an extra hour because they were like, man, we've worked just as hard as you. Like, we want to see this baby. Like, they thought that it would have happened already for sure. And they were also telling some pretty funny stories, like about other births, because we obviously had a lot of time together. And sometimes people have like 15 people in the room, like family members. Like, they're like, we feel like we need to like pull up some bleachers and popcorn. Like, and that's so weird to me. And they, a lot of people listen to music. We listened to, it was like a sunny day, so we listened to some like Jack Johnson, like acoustic vibe kind of thing. But they said that some people listen to heavy metal, which I really can't imagine giving birth to death metal. That sounds pretty intense. So anyway, she comes out, woo! And then she immediately poops all over me. I was like, I don't even care. And then she was the sweetest little thing. Let me show you her. Her name is Lucy. It's actually Lucia because I want her to have options when she's older. But this is her. She was 8 pounds, 21 inches. Oh! And she's been a really great sleeper and all kinds of stuff. So I definitely want to do a video on postpartum just because, not like depression, but people don't talk about what happens to your body postpartum. And I was pretty taken by surprise about that. And I don't want anyone else to be taken by surprise. And then I'll also do one about newborns because there are some tips that I learned. Of course, every baby's different, just like every pregnancy and every birth, but maybe it'll help someone. So anyway, that is my crazy birth story. And I hope that yours is way faster and way easier. And at least I didn't feel any pain because of the epidural. But I was still able to feel like the pressure to push on the contractions. So Anyway, I guess that I will see you in the next video, probably with Lucy there. All right. Talk to you then.